Dealing with compulsive behavior takes time. I know. It used to be that I couldn't meet another dog without stuffing my snout right up his rear end. Oh, it was like a drug. The smell to me like toasted marshmallows or a warm apple pie fresh out of the oven.
No, that's not anything like pie.
Hey, so welcome to part 1 of this month-long series I'm doing called NFB November. If you saw the last video and you're just getting ready, looking at that subscription box waiting for this first episode, I have to say thanks. If you're not, and you're probably not here to hear me say this, it's totally fine. It'll be a little boring. We're about to get cultured up in here, so, you know. If you're coming in hot and you have no idea who I am or why I'm here, basically, watch the last video. It's 4 minutes, not very long. It'll tell you everything you need to know. But otherwise, we're just gonna jump right in here. We got 5 films. They're all pretty good. They're arranged in increasing order of enjoyment, I suppose. The last entry is probably one of my favorites. But, yeah, there's plenty to talk about overall. So, let's jump into it.
It's our last class, and Mr. P tells us to go in the hall and stand in a circle. I remember thinking, what's he doing with that car battery?
Hold hands. It'll make a circuit.
And it hits me. This is Mr. P's shocker, and we're all gonna die.
The first entry we got here is called Shop Class. It was released in 2018 by Hart Snyder, and it chronicles the story of a boy suffering through the relentless torture of shop class. When I first saw this one, I was intrigued. The art style is, I would reckon, it's pretty commercial, you know. Reminds me of something I would see on YTV one day. But the score is really nice, very cinematic, especially during the climax. Makes some power moves, and it really helps the piece stand out. It's a very relatable story. I can't personally relate to it, but it is a relatable story at its core, and it's bound to strike a chord with some people. The style of narration used in the piece also contributes to this feeling. I think a lot of people could get in touch with it in general, not only just in the context of the story being told, but just as a regular story. Actually, this could be a YTV pilot someday. Based on how the story's told, you know, who's at the center of it, how it utilizes what's around it. It's actually kind of lit, honestly. The narrative and the way the story's told, it grips you. It does really suck you in. The narrative is the strongest part of the story. So, how the story's told drags you in almost immediately. And turns out to be a nice entry. Not one of my favorites, but certainly kind of impactful.
His fellow workers had played tricks on him before, but that time... I should have known.
Next one we got here is Edmund Was a Donkey. It was released in 2012 and directed by Frank Dion, and it tells the story of a little man who makes a big discovery when one day his coworkers prank him by giving him a hat with donkey ears on it, and he discovers a whole new side of himself that was previously completely unbeknownst to him, and yes, it's exactly how you imagine it to be. The man sees himself as a donkey. It is a very interesting piece, to say the least. The art style immediately sticks out. It was a 3D animated piece. Everybody has these weird noses that start off really bold and blocky and then become concave in the middle. In general, the design is very unorthodox. It was rendered in monochromatic palettes, and everybody moves rather slowly. It's a very esoteric piece. It feels almost as if it was told entirely in flashback. Color is used to tell the story. Everything is already in a very dull palette, but during certain pieces, where Edmund goes through little imagination spots, the palette gains a bit more complexity. It gains a few more yellows and oranges, and it becomes more warm in general. What's interesting about this one is that the main character does not tell his own story. It's narrated like Shop Class, but it is narrated entirely by other characters surrounding him. It's told from their perspective, as if the story was just pieced together by second-hand account. The twist at the end will probably explain why that is. You gotta go check it out to figure out what the twist is. But the fact that all these other characters are narrating the story for him is also indicative of the character being trapped in another body. He's not really himself. He doesn't get to speak for himself. This creature that he was always meant to be is squarely disconnected from his physical self and this life that he's built up, and these characters that don't really understand him, but just understand what they've seen from him. It's a very telling part of the story. There's only like 4 voice actors used for it. I heard Buster Baxter repeatedly pop up throughout the story, and it repeatedly gave me whiplash every time that happened. There's a little bit of nudity, be forewarned. The score utilizes some bits of singled out units, but they are utilized very well, and it impacts the story in a very powerful way, despite the fact that a lot of the time they're separate from each other. I would say that it's a story that typically wouldn't be told this way, especially by NFB shorts, but I think the payoff is pretty interesting.
Where are you off to, you furious bunch? Are all of you running to a lavish lunch?
So the third one we've got here is Hedgehogs Home. It was released in 2017 by Eva Svijanovic, and it is a retelling of a classic Eastern European folk tale about a hedgehog outsmarting a fox, a bear, a wolf, and a boar, and very lovingly explaining why a home is more valuable than anything else on this earth. It's a stop-motion film, fairly rare for the National Film Board, but the palette and the composition are easily like the strongest parts of the film. It's very cinematic, it's atmospheric, and it tells you everything you need to know. I think the music also fits in very well. It's very folksy, it's down to earth. It matches what's going on the screen pretty well. The East being told is pretty straightforward, and that's not something necessarily the film could give to you, but the way that it's told and the voice in which Hedgehog delivers that is quite powerful. He doesn't lay a paw on any of these guys, but he is the master of his own destiny. And by the end of the film, he's basically the one on top, without spoiling anything. I really like the character design. It's pretty simple, but effective. Some might find it uncanny because the other 4 characters are built to be bipedal, and they look rather anthropomorphic, but not exactly. But I think they're constructed pretty well. They're supposed to be they're supposed to be animalistic to their core, but they're, for the most part, human in how hedonistic and greedy they're made out to be, and that's expressed in how they were constructed. So I think the film nails that really well. I love looking at this film. I love listening to it. It's just a very impactful retelling, and I think it probably stuck to its roots pretty well. I'd highly recommend this one.
Screwdriver.
The fourth film we have here is called Manifold. It is a 2017 2D animated film by Chintus Lundgren. It tells the story of the aforementioned main character, who's a middle-aged fox who still lives with his mom and has a degree but doesn't know what to do with it, and the everlasting tension that exists between them, and how that dynamic plays out when one day a very sexy plumber comes to fix their washing machine. Manifold, like Edmund was a donkey, also tells a story of self-identity and discovery and the importance of independence, but it takes up perhaps a different mantle. I could see both of these being aimed primarily at young adults, but this one in general was constructed from the ground up to be a different kind of tale. Manifold is actually one step in a giant pyramid. To try to make this into a franchise of sorts is based off of a webcomic done 2 years prior, and the master plan, as far as I can suss out, is that Manifold would leave home and take up residence in a gay bar and eventually make his home there, of sorts. This film tells his story before then. It's like a prequel to this eventual animated series. It's a very interesting one, to say the least. It's a very compelling one. I didn't expect for it to be that way, but it is absolutely gripping. The art style is perhaps crudely constructed. You know, it's not what you immediately would think of, but I think that it taps into that idea of identity. It definitely has its own identity as a project. Its art style is pretty distinctive as is, but the characters are kind of unformed. You know, they are kind of loose representations of what they are. You know, you can obviously identify a fox from a wolf and a wolf from a rabbit, but a lot of them have similar body types or constructions, and it kind of ties into how perhaps they see themselves or how they're represented, which sounds like regular design, but it strikes a chord more here. The film is mostly silent. There's very little dialogue that happens in it. It finds a way to communicate what's going on very easily. It's a pretty down-to-earth in approach, even though the main conflict can seem out of the ordinary. The main conflict and how it's constructed is rather, it's overbearing in its approach, but it sneaks up on you. You know, you might get wrapped up in cheering for one side or the other, but once that conflict hits, it hits like a pile of bricks, and it just sits there, man. The dynamics in the film itself are pretty they're pretty simple. It's not hard to wrap your brain around, but there's a lot that you want to unwrap underneath the surface, and once you get to the climax, it's just, again, it just sits with you, and it might hurt, but despite it not ending on the happiest note, and it does have a clear resolution, but it's obviously open-ended. When you get down to brass tacks, the ending is actually pretty enlightening. You know, it's the beginning. It denotes the beginning of going on a journey of self-discovery. You know, that's what it's about. And it's perfectly expressed in that ending. I can't wait to see this being turned into an animated series. I'd love to see that happen, because as far as adult animated content is concerned, this would make a very nice addition into that dichotomy. We really need more insightful programming for young adults in cartoons, and I think this is exactly what we need today.
Hey, big guy! You got any plans tonight? I got a babysitter for the maggots.
So the last entry we have to talk about today is a little film called Animal Behavior. It was released in 2018 by Allison Snowden and David Fine, the same team behind the critically acclaimed short Bob's Birthday. I'd highly recommend that one too. I know I said previously we should look to the future and not focus on Disney all the time, but honestly, this should have won the Oscar. It totally should have won over Bao. I have no idea why it didn't win, and honestly, I'm a little upset. Animal Behavior's premise is pretty simple. You gather up a few animals into an adult therapy group, and they have to work out their issues and just come to terms with who they are as animals. You have a pig that's an overeater, and a leech that can't let anything go. There's no ordinary way to describe this premise, but it's pretty simple. I mean, the dynamics of which are formed are hilarious, but they also say a lot about the human condition. Putting all of these attributes in the perspective of animalistic traits makes it easier for us to understand why we should accept them as humans, because if you apply any of these to, regular human beings, of course you would see a lot of these as regular issues we need to work through. It takes a very humorous approach. The art style is par for the course for them, but the execution is masterful. The climax is just exactly what was needed, and by the end of it, you're gonna find yourself wanting more. I really can't sum this one up. You have to watch it. If there were anyone to watch out of this whole list, watch this one. Because it was Oscar nominated, but also because it is easily one of the best animated films to come out of this decade from this organization. I guarantee it. I mean, what else is there to say, really? It just... My God. It's just so good. How could you skip out on this? I have no idea. And that's pretty much it for this volume. I hope you enjoyed my awkward ramblings. Next week, we're going to tackle the works of Kai Pindle. I'll give you a little sneak peek of what's to come. But yeah, if I had to recommend any one of these films, like I said, Animal Behavior is tops. I also really enjoyed Man Evolved and Hedgehogs Home. Yeah. Those three, I think, stylistically, narratively, philosophically, stand out very well. And you'd have no problem jumping into any of those three. So, go and check them out. I will drop some resources down below as well, so that you can learn more about the films and get an understanding for what they're going for. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Enjoy this little sneak peek, and I will see you next week. So before I talk about this entry, I just want to issue a little disclaimer, a little content warning. This film can be pretty upsetting, and it involves a lot of serious stuff. Child death, sexual abuse, and 4chan memes. So, if you're sensitive to any of those issues, like why wouldn't you be, please skip to this timestamp. The last thing I would want for y'all is to be traumatized by content shown in this video, and I don't want you to go through what I did when watching this one. So, proceed at your own risk. Past this point, proceed with caution, and yeah.